I was balancing two scorching plates when my mother walked in, wearing pearls and looking like she had come to inspect a stain. She did not whisper. She wanted witnesses. "Oh, it is you. Still doing this. How embarrassing." My sister lifted her phone, the live stream already running. I smiled back because they had no idea. This was not just my last shift. It was the last day they would ever control my story. My name is Violet Jenkins, and 20 minutes ago, I was pretty sure I was going to die holding a pitcher of lukewarm mimosas. The chaos of Mother's Day brunch in the American suburbs is a specific kind of violence. It is not the organized adrenaline of a dinner rush where people order steaks and drink red wine. Brunch is frantic. It is sticky. It is 1,000 modifications to eggs Benedict and people asking for extra sides of ranch dressing for things that have no business being near ranch dressing. The air in Cedar and Salt Bistro was thick with the smell of bacon grease, expensive perfume, and passive-aggressive disappointment. I wiped sweat from my forehead with the back of my wrist. Careful not to streak the flour on my cheek, the thermal printer in the kitchen was screaming. That sound haunts my nightmares. Zzzt, 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 zzzt. Every ticket was another demand. Another timer started. Another table of 4 wondering why their gluten-free pancakes were taking 12 minutes instead of 10. "Table 7 needs a refill," Tessa shouted as she squeezed past me with a tray of sizzling skillets. "And the guy on table 4 says his hollandaise is too yellow. What does that even mean?" "Violet, it is egg yolks." "Tell him it is the lighting," I said, grabbing a fresh pot of coffee. "And tell table 7 I am coming." I was 24 years old. My feet throbbed in non-slip shoes that had seen better days. My apron was heavy with a book of tickets, a pocket full of loose change, and 4 pens that I guarded with my life, to the 300 people currently packed into this dining room. I was just a blur of black clothing and servitude. I was the mechanism by which food arrived. I was not a person, I was a function. And that was exactly how I survived. I had learned a long time ago that if you make yourself small, if you make yourself efficient, you can disappear in plain sight. But you cannot disappear when your mother decides to make an entrance. I felt the shift in the room before I saw them. The air near the front hostess stand grew colder, sharper. The heavy oak door swung open, letting in a blast of bright May sunshine, and there she was, Marilyn Jenkins. She did not walk. She glided. She was wearing a cream-colored pantsuit that probably cost more than my car, and her hair was an architectural marvel of hairspray and blonde ambition. Trailing behind her was my sister, Sloane. Sloane was 21, beautiful in that carefully curated, Instagram filter way. She was holding her phone up, the ring light case already glowing, her thumb hovering over the record button. My stomach dropped. I knew that look. It was the look of a predator that had found a wounded animal. I tried to pivot, to head toward the kitchen, maybe hide in the walk-in freezer until the heat death of the universe, but it was too late. Marilyn's eyes swept the room like a radar dish and locked onto me. I saw the smile form. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile a shark gives before it takes a bite out of a seal. She did not wait to be seated. She bypassed the hostess, who was too intimidated to stop her, and marched straight into the center of the dining room. She was not whispering. Marilyn Jenkins never whispered when she had an audience. "Oh," she said. The word hung in the air, loud enough to cut through the chatter of a dozen tables. "It is you." I froze. I was balancing a tray with 2 plates of steak and eggs and a fruit bowl. My arms were shaking. Just a little. I lowered the tray onto a nearby service stand because I knew, with absolute certainty, that if I kept holding it, I would drop it. "Hello, Mom," I said. My voice was low, professional. I was trying to keep the containment field up. "Happy Mother's Day." She stopped 3 feet away from me. She looked me up and down, her eyes lingering on the stain on my apron, the messy bun I had tied in a hurry at 6 in the morning. The sheer exhaustion etched under my eyes. She let out a sigh that was tragic enough for Shakespeare. "Still doing this?" she asked. Her voice carried, The table of 4 directly to my right stopped chewing. The older couple to my left lowered their menus. Honestly, Violet, how embarrassing. The word hit me like a physical slap. Embarrassing. It was her favorite word for me. I was the embarrassing daughter, the one who worked with her hands, the one who did not rush a sorority, the one who had to count pennies while Sloane got brand deals for hair gummies. Sloane stepped up beside her. The phone held high. She was not even looking at me. She was looking at the screen, checking her angles. "Found my sister," Sloane said to the camera, narrating in that chirpy fake influencer voice. "Literally serving tables on Mother's Day. Wild. Can you guys believe this?" She panned the camera to capture my face, then back to herself, making a sad, pitying pout. "We offered to help her, but you know how she is. Some people just have zero ambition." The restaurant had gone quiet. Not silent, but that hush that happens when people realize a train wreck is happening in real time. They were watching. They were listening. In the past, this would have broken me. 4 years ago, when I started this job, I would have turned bright red. I would have stuttered. I might have even cried in the bathroom later. I would have let their narrative wash over me, drowning me in the shame they so carefully manufactured. Poor Violet, the failure, the disappointment. But today was different. I looked at Marilyn. I looked at the pearls around her neck, perfectly knotted. I looked at Sloane, desperate for validation from strangers on the internet. And I felt something shift inside my chest. It was not anger. It was something colder. It was the feeling of a steel door slamming shut and locking forever. They thought they were the main characters. They thought this was just another scene where they got to be the elegant, long-suffering family dealing with the black sheep. They did not know I was holding a grenade. I took a breath. I unclasped my hands from behind my back. I did not yell. I did not throw a drink. I went quiet in a controlled way that feels scarier than yelling. It is the silence of someone who has nothing left to lose. "Before you order," I said. My voice was steady, clear. I pitched it just loud enough to carry to the tables around us, the tables that Marilyn had made sure were listening. Marilyn blinked. She wasn't used to me speaking back. "Excuse me, we are not ready to order. Violet, we are just taking in the tragedy of your life choices. I should tell you something," I continued. Ignoring her jab, I turned slightly, addressing not just her, but the room. I made eye contact with the kind man at table 4. I looked at the woman with the 2 toddlers at table 5. "Today is my last day here." Marilyn let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a cruel sound. "Oh, please, you say that every year. Where are you going to go? Another diner? Are you going to promote yourself to dishwasher?" Sloane giggled. "Guys, she says it is her last day." She told her live stream. "Predictions in the chat. Is she getting fired?" I waited for the giggle to die down. I waited for Marilyn to smirk. I let them have that one last second of superiority. I wanted them to savor it, so the taste of ash would be that much more bitter. "Actually," I said, and I allowed a small, polite smile to touch my lips. "Tomorrow morning, at 8 o'clock, I start as a junior analyst at Crown Ridge Advisory Group." The silence that followed was absolute. Crown Ridge Advisory Group was not just a company. In this city, in this economy, Crown Ridge was the gold standard. It was the fortress on the hill. It was the kind of financial firm that hired from the top 1% of Ivy League graduates. The kind of place where starting bonuses were enough to buy a luxury sedan. It was a place Marilyn had spent years trying to get Sloane an internship at, pulling every string she had, only to be met with polite rejection letters. Marilyn's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her face went slack. The smug mask slipped, revealing the confusion underneath. "What?" she whispered. "Crown Ridge," I repeated, enunciating every syllable. "I signed the contract 2 weeks ago. Senior analyst team, mergers and acquisitions." A ripple spread through the room. The customers, who had been looking at me with pity moments ago, were now looking at me with wide eyes. I saw the man at table 4 nudge his wife. I saw a woman in a business suit at the corner table lower her sunglasses to get a better look at me. Sloane, who had been busy reading comments, suddenly looked up. "Wait, what did you say?" "I said I'm done." I told her, "I worked double shifts here for 4 years to pay for my tuition. Sloan, I graduated summa cum laude last week. You missed the ceremony. You were at Coachella." "You didn't graduate," Marilyn stammered. Her face was turning a blotchy red. "You dropped out. You told me you dropped out." "No," I corrected her gently. "You told everyone I dropped out because it fit your story better. I just stopped correcting you." The dynamic in the room flipped so fast it caused whiplash. The energy shifted from poor waitress to undercover powerhouse. I could feel the respect radiating from the tables around us. The shame that Marilyn tried to paint on me was dripping off, dissolving in the light of the truth. Sloane's phone was still recording. She looked down at the screen. "Oh my God," she muttered. The viewer count just jumped to 3,000. She did not realize it, but the narrative had escaped her. The comments were scrolling so fast they were a blur. But I could guess what they were saying. They weren't laughing at me anymore. They were asking questions. They were wondering why a mother would mock a daughter who clearly had her life together. They were witnessing the birth of a villain, and it wasn't me. Marilyn gripped the back of a chair. She looked like she had been struck by lightning. This was impossible. Violet, her scapegoat, her punching bag, had just outranked her. Crown Ridge was exclusive. It was prestigious. It was everything Marilyn valued, and I had achieved it while wiping tables and serving her friends their Cobb salads. "You are lying," Marilyn hissed, her voice low now, desperate to regain control. "You are making a scene. This is pathetic. I am not the one live streaming," I said, "and I am not the one who walked into a place of business to insult the staff." I picked up the tray I had set down. My hands were perfectly steady now. The adrenaline was not fear anymore. It was fuel. "I have tables to serve," I said. "Since you haven't ordered, I will give you a few more minutes, but I should warn you, we are very busy today." I turned my back on them. It was the most satisfying movement of my life. I walked away, toward table 7 with the refill they needed. "Excuse me," the man at table 7 said as I poured his coffee. He was looking past me at my mother, who was still standing frozen in the middle of the room. "Did you say Crown Ridge?" "Yes, sir," I said. "I start tomorrow." "My niece works in compliance there," he said, a grin spreading across his face. "That is a hell of a vetting process. Congratulations." "Thank you," I said. "That is one way to quit a job," his wife added, glancing at Marilyn. "She looks like she swallowed a lemon." "She usually does," I said, allowing myself a moment of candor. Behind me, I could hear Marilyn hissing at Sloan. "Turn that thing off. Turn it off right now." "I can't," Sloan whispered back, panic rising in her voice. "The chat is going crazy. They want to see the offer letter. Mom, they are dragging you." I smiled. I didn't need to turn around to see it. I could feel it. For 24 years, I had been the extra in their movie. I had been the prop they used to make themselves feel taller. But today, the script had burned. I walked to the computer terminal to punch in an order for table 3. My manager, Evan, was standing there, watching the whole thing with his arms crossed. He looked at my mother, then at me. "Crown Ridge?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Junior analyst," I confirmed. "Nice," he said. "Does this mean you are not closing tonight?" "I am finishing my shift, Evan," I said. "I am a professional, unlike some people." I glanced back at table 12, where Marilyn and Sloan were finally sitting down. They looked small. They looked huddled. The other customers were ignoring them now. Or worse, whispering about them. The power had moved. It was sitting right here, in my apron pocket, alongside my pens and my order pad. This was only the beginning. I had the job. I had the exit strategy. But I also knew my mother. She would not take a loss like this lying down. She would regroup. She would attack. She would try to find a crack in the armor. Let her try. She didn't know about the other bomb I was sitting on. She didn't know that while I was studying finance, I had also been studying the suspicious activity on my own credit report. She didn't know that the junior analyst she was so jealous of had already analyzed the Jenkins family accounts. The last day wasn't just about the bistro, it was about the bank of Mom and Dad, and the bill was coming due. "Violet," the chef yelled from the pass, "order up 2 burgers, medium rare." "Coming," I yelled back. I balanced the hot plates on my arm. The heat felt good. It felt real. I walked back out onto the floor, head high, ready to serve the next course. My mother watched me come. She picked up the menu, her knuckles white. "I will be right with you," I told her as I breezed past their table. "Just gotta take care of the paying customers first." Sloane's phone was still up. I winked at the camera lens as I passed. The chat must have loved that. To understand why I stood in the center of Cedar and Salt Bistro and nuked my relationship with my mother, you have to go back 4 years. You have to go back to a Tuesday afternoon in April, the kind of spring day that feels like a promise you are afraid to trust. The mail had come early. I remember the sound of the mail truck's brakes squealing outside our suburban driveway. I was the first one to the box. I pulled out a stack of bills, a catalog for patio furniture, and 2 large, thick envelopes. One was addressed to Sloane Jenkins, the other was addressed to Violet Jenkins. I stood there on the asphalt for a long time. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I knew what the thickness meant. Thin envelopes were rejections. Thick ones were welcome mats. We had both gotten in. I walked inside, my hands trembling. I placed Sloane's envelope on the granite island in the kitchen and took mine to the corner of the room. Slicing it open with my thumbnail, it was an acceptance letter to Holloway Heights University. But it was not just an acceptance, it was an invitation to the Honors College. And underneath the glossy brochure was a letter from the financial aid office. I read the number 3 times to make sure I was not hallucinating. It was a merit scholarship covering 80% of my tuition. 80%. It was the kind of validation I had spent 18 years starving for. It was proof that my grades, my extracurriculars, and my sleepless nights actually meant something. I heard the front door open. Marilyn and Sloane walked in, laughing about something Sloane had seen on TikTok. "Mail is here," I said, my voice sounding thin in the large kitchen. Sloane grabbed her envelope. She tore it open, not with reverence, but with the chaotic energy of someone who assumes the world owes them good news. She scanned the page. "I got in," she screamed. She did a little jump, her heels clacking on the tile. "Oh my God, I got into state." Marilyn dropped her keys and threw her arms around Sloane. They jumped up and down together, a blonde blur of excitement. "I knew it. I knew you would. Oh, my brilliant baby." I waited. I stood by the refrigerator, holding my own letter, waiting for the wave of celebration to widen enough to include me. I waited for my mother to look over and ask, "What about you?" Violet, after 2 minutes of them analyzing Sloane's acceptance package, which, I noticed from a distance, did not include a scholarship offer. Marilyn finally turned to me, her smile faded slightly, the corners of her mouth tightening as if she were bracing for bad news. "Well," she asked, "did you hear back?" "I got into Holloway," I said. I held up the letter, Honors College, and they gave me a scholarship. It covers almost everything. Marilyn looked at the paper in my hand. For a split second, I saw something flash in her eyes that looked dangerously like disappointment. Then she sighed, a long exhale through her nose. "That is nice, Violet," she said, "but Holloway is expensive, even with a discount." "It is a scholarship." "Mom, not a discount," I corrected her. "And it is a better school for finance. We will talk about the logistics later," she said, waving her hand as if swatting away a fly. She turned back to Sloane. "We need to celebrate. I'm going to call the bakery. We need a cake and balloons. We should invite the neighbors." That night, our living room was full of people. There was a banner taped across the fireplace mantel that said, "Congratulations, Sloane," in glittery gold letters. There was a sheet cake with the State University mascot piped onto it in blue icing. No one mentioned Holloway. When a neighbor asked me where I was going, Marilyn cut in before I could answer. Violet is still deciding, she said, her hand resting protectively on Sloane's shoulder. She has some options, but we are trying to be realistic about finances. I stood in the corner, holding a paper plate with a slice of cake I did not want, and I felt the first brick of the wall I would eventually build around myself slide into place. The real blow came 3 days later. Marilyn sat me down in the sunroom. She had a spreadsheet open on her laptop, but she did not turn the screen so I could see it. She took off her reading glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose, performing the role of the stressed, sacrificing mother. I have been running the numbers, she said. And Violet, I have to be honest with you. Since your father left, things have been tight. I simply cannot support 2 households. I know, I said. That is why I worked so hard for the scholarship. The tuition at Holloway with my grant is actually less than what you would pay for Sloane at State. It is not just tuition, she interrupted, her voice sharp. It is room and board. It is books. It is lifestyle. She took a sip of her iced tea. I have decided that we can make it work for Sloane. She needs the structure of a dorm. She needs that college experience to really blossom. But for you, she paused, looking at me with a gaze that was terrifyingly empty. You are different, Violet. You are tougher. You always land on your feet. What does that mean? I asked. My stomach was twisting into knots. It means I cannot pay for you to go to Holloway, she said flatly. I am sorry, but I have to prioritize. Sloane, well, she is fragile. She needs help. You have always been the independent one. So because I am capable, I get nothing. Do not be dramatic, she snapped. You can go to community college for 2 years, or you can work. Honestly, I always thought you were more suited for work anyway. You have that grit. I found out the next week that tight finances was a lie, or rather, it was a selective truth. Marilyn signed a lease for an off-campus luxury apartment for Sloane because the dorms were too small and moldy. She put a down payment on a brand new white crossover SUV because she wanted Sloane to have a reliable car for the 10-minute drive to campus. I was driving a 12-year-old sedan with a broken air conditioner that I had bought with my own babysitting money. It wasn't just about the money. I realized that as I watched Marilyn co-sign the lease papers, it was about the narrative. My father had left 6 years prior. He was a quiet, hard-working man who eventually got tired of Marilyn's constant demands for perfection and walked out. I looked like him. I had his dark hair, his serious eyes, his tendency to think before I spoke. Sloane was a carbon copy of Marilyn Blonde, bubbly, and demanding. Every time Marilyn looked at me, she saw the man who had rejected her. Every time I succeeded without her help, it reminded her that she was not necessary. So she had to manufacture a situation where I was less than. She had to rewrite history. By the end of the summer, Marilyn had perfected her script. She told the neighbors, her tennis club friends, and our extended family that I didn't really want college. She told them I was taking a break to find myself. She painted me as the wayward, unmotivated child, and herself as the saintly mother supporting the ambitious daughter. Sloane, I did not argue with her. I did not scream. I did something that scared her more. I went silent. I enrolled in Holloway anyway. I took out the maximum student loans I was allowed in my own name to cover the 20% gap my scholarship missed. I found a roommate situation in a basement apartment on the bad side of town, where the rent was cheap and the heating was loud, and I walked into Cedar and Salt Bistro. I remember my interview with Evan Rowe. It was 3 o'clock on a Tuesday. The restaurant was empty between lunch and dinner. Evan looked tired. He was reviewing invoices at the bar. I have no serving experience, I told him. But I learn fast. I never call in sick. And I need money. Evan looked at me. He saw the desperation I was trying to hide behind a rigid posture. He saw the dark circles that were already forming under my eyes. It is hard work, he said. People are mean. Your feet will bleed. You will smell like French fries forever. I do not care, I said. Can you work weekends? I can work every weekend and holidays. You are hired, he said. Start Friday. That was how the grind began. For 4 years, my life was a blur of exhaustion. My alarm went off at 5 in the morning. I would drink black coffee that tasted like battery acid and drive my rattling car to campus for 8 o'clock classes. I sat in the front row of every lecture, taking notes with a ferocity that frightened my classmates. I wasn't just studying to pass. I was studying to escape. At 2 in the afternoon, I would drive to the bistro. I would change into my black uniform in the cramped bathroom, splash cold water on my face, and transform into Violet the server. I learned to carry 3 plates on one arm. I learned to memorize the specials while calculating the tax on a bill in my head. I learned to smile when a customer told me I was too pretty to be just a waitress. I learned to swallow my pride when girls I had gone to high school with came in for brunch, looking fresh and rested, and asked me for more napkins without making eye contact. I worked doubles on Fridays and Saturdays. On Sundays, I worked the brunch shift, which was the circle of hell Dante forgot to write about. My mother and sister came in occasionally. They never sat in my section, but they made sure I saw them. They would wave from across the room, a little performative wave, as if to say, "Look at us, supporting you." Marilyn would tell the hostess, loud enough for me to hear, "Yes, my daughter works here. We are so proud of her work ethic. Not everyone is cut out for academics." It took every ounce of discipline I possessed not to walk over and slam my dean's list certificate onto her table, but I didn't. I stayed quiet. I did my homework in the break room, using a napkin dispenser as a paperweight. I wrote essays on my phone in the 5 minutes it took for the chef to plate a salad. I studied corporate finance laws while polishing silverware at midnight. There were nights I cried in my car because I was so tired. My bones felt like they were vibrating. There were nights I looked at my bank account, saw the number hovering in the low double digits, and wondered if I should just give up and beg Marilyn for help. But then I would remember the "Congratulations Sloan" banner. I would remember the car I wasn't allowed to drive. I would remember Marilyn telling me I was tougher as an excuse to neglect me, and the steel in my spine would harden a little more. I decided then, in the quiet of my beat-up car, that I would never ask them for anything again. Not for money, not for approval, not for love. If I wanted a life, I had to build it myself. And I had to build it so high, so solid, and so undeniable that they could never tear it down. I didn't want their pity. I didn't even want their respect. I wanted their shock. I wanted the day to come when I could stand in front of them, holding the receipts of my own success, and watch them realize that they had bet on the wrong horse. I didn't know then that the opportunity would come on a Mother's Day, or that it would happen in front of a live internet audience, but I prepared for it every single day. Every table I turned, every dollar I saved, every exam I aced was a brick in the fortress I was building. The golden child choice Marilyn made 4 years ago was supposed to break me. She thought she was discarding me. She didn't realize she was forging me. By the time my senior year rolled around, I wasn't just a tired waitress. I was a weapon waiting to be fired, and I was aiming for the one thing Marilyn cared about more than anything else: her reputation. The notification came through at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night. I was sitting on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by a fortress of textbooks and empty caffeine cans, trying to convince myself that I was prepared for my final portfolio review. My phone buzzed against the hardwood floor. It was a single, short vibration, the kind that usually signals a spam email or a coupon from a clothing store I cannot afford. I almost ignored it. My eyes were burning from staring at spreadsheets for 6 hours, and I just wanted to sleep. But some instinct, some low hum of anticipation that had been vibrating in my chest for weeks, made me reach over and flip the screen up. The subject line was simple: employment offer. Crown Ridge Advisory Group. The air left my lungs. It didn't rush out. It just vanished, leaving me sitting there in a vacuum of sudden, terrifying silence. I unlocked the phone with a thumb that was shaking so hard I had to try twice. I tapped the email app. It loaded painfully slowly, the little spinning wheel mocking my anxiety, until finally, the text popped into focus. Dear Ms. Jenkins, we are pleased to extend you an offer for the position of junior analyst within our mergers and acquisitions division. I stopped reading. I had to close my eyes and count to 3 because the words were swimming. I forced myself to look again. I skipped the pleasantries and scrolled down to the bolded numbers in the compensation section. The base salary was $85,000. There was a signing bonus of $10,000. There was a performance structure that could push the total compensation well over 6 figures in the first 18 months. I stared at the number, $85,000. To someone like Marilyn, that might have been just a decent starting point. But to me, staring at that number in my dim apartment where the radiator rattled every time the wind blew, it looked like a lifeline. It was more money than I had made in 4 years of waiting tables, scraping plates, and tolerating sexual harassment from drunk businessmen combined. It was enough to pay off my student loans in 3 years if I lived aggressively frugal. It was enough to get an apartment with a doorman. It was enough to never, ever have to ask anyone for help again. I read the email 4 times. Then I read the attached PDF contract. Then I read the email again. I needed to make sure it wasn't a phishing scam or a cruel prank, but it was real. The sender was the senior director I had interviewed with, a woman named Sarah Chen. No, not Chen. Sarah Gable. I had to be careful with names. The signature was digital but valid. I sat back against the wall and let out a laugh that sounded a little like a sob. I had done it. While Marilyn was telling her friends I was aimless, while Sloane was posting photos of her outfits, I had breached the fortress. I immediately took a screenshot. Cloud storage was not enough for me. I needed something tangible. I walked to my terrifyingly old printer in the corner, hooked up the cable, and printed the entire offer letter. The ink was low, so the logo came out a little streaky, but the text was legible. I held the warm paper in my hands. It felt heavy. It felt like a weapon. I folded it carefully and put it in my bag. I didn't know why exactly. Maybe I just wanted to be able to touch it during my shift the next day. A secret talisman to remind me that I was not just a waitress. I didn't realize then that I was loading a gun. As I was staring at the Crown Ridge logo on the paper, a memory scratched at the back of my mind. It was something vague, a flash of an image I had scrolled past months ago on Instagram. I pulled my phone back out and opened my archive. I didn't follow Sloane for my own mental health, but I checked her page periodically, like checking the weather to see if a storm was coming. I scrolled back 3 months. Sloane posted everything, her breakfast, her gym outfits, her study sessions, which were mostly just pictures of highlighters next to unopened books. I found it, a post from February. It was a photo of a laptop screen, taken at an artistic angle with a latte in the foreground. The caption read, "Big things coming. Manifesting my corporate era, boss babe." I zoomed in on the laptop screen in the photo. It was blurry, but the color scheme was unmistakable. It was the dark navy and slate gray of the Crown Ridge application portal. I recognized the layout of the text boxes. I recognized the upload resume button in the corner. My heart gave a strange, cold thump. Sloane had applied to Crown Ridge. Of course she had. Marilyn probably made her. Marilyn was obsessed with Crown Ridge. She viewed it as the only acceptable place for someone of our status to work. If Sloane had applied in February, she would have heard back by March. The rejection emails went out weeks before the offers. Sloane had never mentioned a rejection. She had never mentioned the application at all after that one post. The posts about her corporate era had quietly stopped, replaced by posts about focusing on mental health and planning a summer trip to Europe. She didn't get in. I sat there in the dark, connecting the dots. Sloane had applied and failed. I had applied and succeeded, and neither of them knew about me. The realization made my skin prickle. It wasn't just a victory anymore. It was a trap waiting to be sprung. But I didn't have time to process the irony because my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call. The caller ID said, "Mom." It was almost midnight. Marilyn never called this late unless someone was dead or she needed to complain about her neighbors. I cleared my throat, trying to sound awake, and answered, "Hello? Violet?" Her voice was jarringly bright. It was high-pitched, sugary, saturated with a fake warmth that made the hair on my arms stand up. It was her public performance voice, but she was using it in private. That was the first red flag. "Hi, Mom, is everything okay?" "Everything is wonderful," she trilled. "I was just sitting here with your sister, and we realized we haven't seen you in simply ages. We miss you, honey." I heard a sound in the background. It was a stifled giggle. It was Sloane. "You saw me 2 weeks ago," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "I waited on you. You sent back the iced tea because the ice cubes were too cloudy." "Oh, stop being so sensitive," Marilyn laughed, a tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. "Anyway, we want to do something special for Mother's Day. Since we know you are always working so industrious, really we thought we would come to you." Come to me. To the bistro for brunch. She sounded like she was announcing a trip to Disney World. "We want to support you. We want to see you in your element. I have already called and requested a table in your section. The manager was so helpful." The dread that pooled in my stomach was cold and heavy. This wasn't a family meal. Marilyn hated the bistro on Sundays. She called it a zoo, and she never requested my section. She usually requested the section furthest away from the kitchen so the noise wouldn't disturb her. Which was never my section because I always took the high-traffic tables near the pass. And then I heard it again. Sloane giggling in the background, followed by a whisper, "Ask her if she's working the patio." "Are you working the main floor or the patio?" "Sweetie?" Marilyn asked, her voice oozing innocence. "We want to make sure the lighting is good for you to see us. They wanted the lighting for the camera." I gripped the phone tighter. I knew exactly what this was. They were bored. Sloane's engagement numbers were probably down, or Marilyn was feeling insecure about something in her social circle, and they needed a prop. They needed the visual of the struggling sister serving the successful family. It was content. I was the content. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run. I could call Evan right now. I could tell him I was sick. I could switch shifts with Tessa. I could hide. If I wasn't there, they couldn't humiliate me. But then I looked down at my bag. I looked at the corner of the white paper sticking out of the side pocket. Crown Ridge Advisory Group. If I ran, I was proving them right. If I hid, I was accepting the narrative that I was something to be ashamed of. Hiding was what kept the lies alive. Hiding was what allowed Marilyn to tell people I dropped out. Hiding was my complicity. I took a deep breath. "That sounds great. Mom," I said, "I am working the main floor. Table 12 is open at 11 o'clock. "Perfect," Marilyn chirped. "We will see you then. Dress nice well. As nice as your uniform allows. Love you." The line went dead. I sat there for a long time, listening to the silence of the apartment. I wasn't scared anymore. I was cold. It was a clarifying kind of cold. The next day at the bistro was the Friday before the Mother's Day storm. The restaurant was vibrating with prep work. I was folding napkins in the back corner when Tessa sat down opposite me. Tessa was a lifer in the industry, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and zero patience for nonsense. She knew about my family. She had seen Marilyn in action before. "I saw the reservation book," Tessa said, keeping her voice low. "Jenkins, party of 2, section 4. That is you." "I know," I said, smoothing a crease in the linen. "You want me to take it?" Tessa offered. "I can swap sections with you. I will tell Evan I need the steps. You can hide in the back and polish glasses until they leave. You do not need that energy. Vi." It was a kind offer. A year ago. I would have taken it. I would have thanked her and retreated to the safety of the dish pit. "No," I said. I looked up at her. "I am going to take the table." Tessa frowned. "Why? They are just going to pick at you. I saw your mom last time. She treats you like furniture that she is disappointed in." "I know," I repeated. "But if I switch, they win. I need them to see me. I need witnesses." Tessa paused. She looked at my face, really looked at me. And she must have seen something different there. Maybe it was the lack of fear. Maybe it was the strange calmness that had settled over me since the email. "Okay," she said slowly, "but I am keeping my eyes open. If they start anything, I am spilling water on your sister's lap. Accidentally, of course. Keep your phone ready, too," I said. "For what?" "Just in case." I finished folding the napkin and stood up. I had one more thing to do. I walked to the manager's office. Evan Rowe was sitting at his desk, buried under invoices for seafood. He looked up when I knocked on the doorframe. "Hey, Violet, what is up?" "If you are asking for Sunday off, the answer is no. I would have to clone myself. I am working Sunday," I said. "I just wanted to give you a heads up." "About what?" "My mother and sister are coming in. They requested my section." Evan grimaced. He remembered them. "Great. Do I need to bounce them?" "No," I said. "But I have a feeling they are planning a scene. My sister films everything for social media, and my mother, well, she likes an audience." Evan put down his pen. He leaned back in his chair, his expression hardening. Evan was a good guy. He protected his staff. He had thrown a guy out last week for snapping his fingers at a server. "Listen to me," Evan said. "You are my best server. Violet, if they disrespect you, family or not, it becomes my problem. We have a policy against harassment of staff. It applies to everyone, even mothers." "I know," I said. "I just wanted you to know that if things get weird, I'm not going to just stand there and take it this time." Evan studied me for a second. He nodded. "Good. Don't. If they want a show, we can give them the door. Just give me the signal." "Thanks, Evan." I walked back out onto the floor. The restaurant was beginning to fill up for the Friday dinner rush. The noise was rising, the clatter of silverware, the hiss of the espresso machine, the murmur of conversation. It usually stressed me out. Today, it sounded like a battlefield drum. I touched the side of my bag where the offer letter was hidden. They were coming to ambush me. They were coming to turn my life into a joke for a few thousand likes on a live stream. They thought I was the same Violet they had bullied into silence 4 years ago. They had no idea that I had already won. The only question now was how much damage they were going to do to themselves when they tried to come for me. I tied my apron tight. I was ready. Saturday night was not for sleeping. Saturday night was for strategy. I sat at my small kitchen table, the one with the wobble in the left leg that I had fixed with a folded piece of cardboard. The city outside was loud, the usual weekend chorus of sirens and distant bass from passing cars. But inside my apartment, the air was still. I had the printed offer letter from Crown Ridge in front of me. Next to it, I had placed a fresh legal pad and a pen. I was not approaching Sunday like a daughter going to lunch with her mother. I was approaching it like a lawyer preparing for a hostile deposition. For the last 4 years, my interactions with Marilyn and Sloan had been defensive. I had spent every holiday and birthday dodging their barbs, swallowing my pride, and trying to make myself invisible so they would lose interest and move on to another target. I had played the role of the victim. Tomorrow, I was playing the prosecutor. I picked up the pen and wrote rules of engagement at the top of the pad. I needed strict boundaries for myself because I knew exactly how they operated. They were emotional terrorists. They knew which buttons to push to make me cry, to make me yell, or to make me retreat. If I did any of those things, they won the footage. If I cried, I was unstable. If I yelled, I was aggressive. If I retreated, I was weak. I wrote down rule number 1, no crying. It did not matter what they said. They could insult my hair, my job, my car, or my non-existent love life. They could bring up Dad. They could tell me I was a disappointment to the family lineage. I would not shed a single tear until I was safely inside my own car at the end of the shift. Rule number 2. No yelling. Volume was their game. Marilyn got loud to dominate a room. Sloan got loud to perform for her audience. I would go the other way. I would speak in the low, calm register of a person who holds all the aces. Silence is louder than screaming if you use it right. Rule number 3. No apologies. This was the most important one. I looked at my reflection in the dark window of the kitchen. I was done apologizing for being a waitress. I was done acting like this job was a shameful secret. This job had paid my rent. It had bought my textbooks. It had fed me when my mother claimed she was too broke to help while buying her other daughter a luxury SUV. There was dignity in labor, and I would not let them strip that away from me in the final hour. I put the pen down. The mental preparation was only half the battle. The other half was logistical. I opened my laptop and pulled up the employee handbook for Cedar and Salt Bistro. I knew most of it by heart, but I wanted to be certain. I scrolled to the section on refusal of service. Clause 4. Section B. Management reserves the right to refuse service to any patron who exhibits harassment, verbal abuse, or threatening behavior towards staff or other guests. I memorized the phrasing. If Marilyn called me embarrassing or pathetic, loud enough for a witness to hear, she was technically violating Section B. Then I scrolled to the payment and gratuity section, for parties of 6 or more, or for bills exceeding a certain threshold. An automatic gratuity of 20% may be applied at the server's discretion. I smiled. Marilyn and Sloan were only a party of 2, but Marilyn had a habit. When she wanted to show off, she ordered the menu. She would order appetizers she didn't eat, bottles of wine she barely touched, and desserts just to critique the plating. If she tried to pull her usual generosity stunt to look rich for the camera, the bill would climb high enough to trigger the discretionary gratuity rule. I would make sure of it. Finally, I checked the policy on declined payments. In the event of a payment failure, the establishment requires an alternative method immediately. If 3 attempts fail, management must be notified to secure the debt. I closed the laptop. The policies were my shield. The next morning, the sun rose with a blinding, cheerful brightness that felt sarcastic. It was Mother's Day. The world was full of floral arrangements and brunch reservations. I woke up at 6 o'clock. I showered, scrubbing my skin until it was pink, and put on my uniform. I ironed my black shirt until the creases were sharp enough to cut paper. I tied my apron with a double knot. I pulled my hair back into a tight, severe bun. No flyaways, no mess. I sat on the edge of my bed and opened the banking app on my phone. This was the step that made my heart race the most. It was the nuclear option. For years, I had suspected that Marilyn played loose with finances. I knew she had my social security number. She was my mother. After all, when I had run my own credit report 3 weeks ago as part of a background check for the Crown Ridge job, I had found 3 credit cards I didn't recognize. They were maxed out. They were in my name. But the billing address was Marilyn's house. She had been using my credit score to fund her lifestyle because her own credit was likely ruined. She thought I was too unorganized and broke to ever check a credit report. She thought I was just the waitress daughter who dealt in cash and didn't understand finance. I navigated to the credit bureau website. I logged in. I found the button that said, Freeze Credit File. I took a deep breath. Once I did this, no new lines of credit could be opened, and more importantly, any active cards that were being juggled or refinanced based on my open status might flag a security alert if she tried to use them for a large, unusual purchase like a massive brunch bill to show off. I pressed confirm. Your credit file is now frozen. I did the same for the other 2 major bureaus. Click, click, locked. Happy Mother's Day, I whispered to the empty room. I grabbed my bag. Inside, I had placed a plain manila folder. It contained my proof stack. First, my official university transcript, complete with the university seal, showing a 4.0 GPA and the summa cum laude designation. Second, the scholarship letter from 4 years ago, proving I didn't pay tuition, debunking her claim that I drained the family finances. Third, the Crown Ridge offer letter. I hoped I wouldn't have to use them. In a perfect world, I would just serve them eggs. They would leave, and I would never see them again. But I didn't live in a perfect world. I lived in a world where my sister was an aspiring influencer who needed content. If they tried to lie about me, I wasn't going to argue. I was just going to hand over the paper. Facts don't care about your live stream. I drove to the bistro in silence. The roads were quiet. When I pulled into the staff lot, I saw Tessa's car was already there. I walked in through the back kitchen door. The smell of roasting potatoes and bacon grease hit me instantly. It was a comforting smell. This place had been my home when my real home rejected me. I found Evan in the office, looking at the reservation grid with the expression of a general surveying a losing battlefield. "Morning," I said. "It is going to be a bloodbath," Evan said without looking up. "We are fully booked from 10 o'clock until 3. The patio is already full." "I am ready," I said. "Are you—" He looked up then. "I saw your mom's name on the list, table 12. "I saw it too." "I meant what I said." "Violet," Evan said, his voice dropping to a serious tone. "You do not have to take their abuse. If she starts snapping her fingers or making comments about your appearance, you give me the nod. I will ask them to leave. I do not care if it is Mother's Day. I do not care if she writes a bad Yelp review." "I appreciate that, Evan," I said. "But I need to handle this. I just need you to back me up on policy. If I add the auto grate, or if I enforce the payment rules, I need to know you won't override me to keep the peace." Evan studied me. He saw the iron in my posture. He nodded. "You follow the book. I will back the book. No exceptions." "Thank you." I went to the locker room to stash my bag. Tessa was there, changing her shoes. "Hey," she said. "Game day." "Game day," I agreed. "I cleared space on my phone," Tessa said, keeping her voice low so the new hostess wouldn't hear. "I have 5 gigabytes free. If your sister starts recording, I am recording her recording you. It is meta. I don't want it for drama," I clarified, opening my locker. "I don't want to be a viral star, but if she edits the video to make me look like I am screaming or throwing things, I need the raw footage to prove I didn't. Crown Ridge does background checks. I can't have a fake freakout video attached to my name." "I got you," Tessa said. "I will be a sniper. She won't even know I'm filming." I closed my locker. I took a second to center myself. I stood with my feet shoulder-width apart, took a breath in for 4 seconds, held it for 4, and let it out for 4. I rehearsed the line I had been practicing in the mirror for 2 days. I am not discussing my worth with people committed to misunderstanding me. It was my mantra. It was the wall between their poison and my peace. I checked my phone one last time before stashing it in my apron. A notification from Instagram popped up. It was a post from Sloan. The photo was a selfie of her and Marilyn in their car. They were dressed in pastels, looking flawless and expensive. Marilyn was wearing a hat that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. The caption read, "On our way to surprise my big sis at work, making memories today. Mother's Day. Family first supportive." She had tagged Cedar and Salt Bistro. It was a performance, a calculated, cynical performance. They were driving here to surprise me at a job they mocked, to support a daughter they ignored, all for the validation of strangers. I stared at the screen. The anger flared up, hot and sharp, but I pushed it down. I converted it into cold, hard resolve. They wanted a show, fine, but they had forgotten the first rule of live theater: anything can happen. I slipped the phone into my pocket. I walked out of the locker room, down the narrow hallway past the dish pit, and onto the main floor. The restaurant was buzzing. The host stand was already surrounded by people waiting for tables. I walked to the time clock. I punched in my code. 1055. The machine beeped. Accepted. I looked at the time. It was 10:30 in the morning. "Last day," I whispered to myself, tightening the strings of my apron until they dug into my waist. Last lie. I turned around and walked into my section. Table 12 was empty. Waiting. The silverware was polished. The water glasses were overturned and sparkling. It was a perfect stage, and I was ready for my cue. The doors opened at 11 o'clock sharp, and the flood began. Within 15 minutes, every seat in Cedar and Salt Bistro was taken. The noise level rose from a gentle hum to a full-throated roar. It was a beautiful, overwhelming cacophony. There were babies crying, corks popping, silverware clinking against china, and laughter, so much laughter, I moved through the dining room like a ghost in the machine. dodging running toddlers and balancing trays of eggs. Benedict, my section, Section 4, was a cluster of 6 tables near the large bay windows. The sunlight was pouring in, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air and making the mimosas glow like liquid gold. It was hard not to feel a pang of envy. At table 10, there was a family of 3 generations. The grandmother, a woman with silver hair and a bright blue scarf, was holding court. Her son was laughing at a story she was telling, his hand resting gently on her arm. His daughter, a teenager with headphones around her neck, wasn't looking at her phone. She was looking at her grandmother with a soft, genuine smile. "More coffee, hun?" the grandmother asked me as I poured a refill. "Yes, please," she beamed. "You are working so hard today. Do you have a mom waiting for you at home?" I paused, the pot hovering over her cup. The question was innocent, meant to be kind. "She is actually coming in for lunch today," I said. It wasn't a lie. "Oh, that is wonderful." The grandmother clapped her hands together. "She must be so proud of you, working hard, making your own way. That is the American dream, isn't it?" I smiled. It was my customer service smile, the one that didn't reach my eyes. "Here's your cream, ma'am." I didn't answer her. I couldn't tell her that my mother wasn't coming to celebrate my hard work. She was coming to mock it. I couldn't tell her that making my own way was less of a dream and more of a survival tactic. I moved to table 11. A young father was wrestling a high chair into submission, while his wife tried to soothe a fussing baby. He looked up as I set down a basket of warm bread. "Hey," he said, catching my eye. He looked exhausted but happy. "Thank you for being here today. I know you guys probably want to be with your own families. We appreciate it, really." The sincerity in his voice hit me in the chest. It was such a small thing acknowledgement, gratitude. It was the currency I had been starving for in my own home for years. "It is my pleasure," I said. And for a second, I actually meant it. Serving people who were grateful was easy. It was serving people who felt entitled to your soul that was the problem. I checked my watch. 11:20. They were late. Of course they were late. Marilyn believed that punctuality was for employees, not for the stars of the show. I was at the POS terminal, punching in an order for gluten-free toast, when I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Tessa. 12 o'clock, she whispered. "Incoming. Target acquired." I turned. The entrance of the bistro was crowded with people waiting for tables. But Marilyn and Sloane cut through the chaos like a knife. They didn't blend in. They were dressed for a different event entirely. Perhaps a garden party at a country club or a photo shoot for a magazine that didn't exist. Marilyn was wearing a pale pink suit with a matching fascinator hat. A hat? Indoors. Her pearls were the size of grapes. She carried herself with a rigid, regal posture. Her chin tilted up as if the air at eye level was beneath her. Sloane was trailing a step behind, wearing a floral sundress that I knew cost $400 because I had seen the receipt on the kitchen counter 2 weeks ago. But it wasn't the dress that drew my eye. It was the phone. She was holding it up at chest level, stabilized with a small handheld gimbal. The screen was facing her, but the camera lenses were pointed out at the world. She was talking to the phone, narrating their entrance, smiling that practiced, dead-eyed smile that influencers use when they are creating content. I watched them approach the host stand. The poor hostess, a 19-year-old college student named Maya, looked terrified. Marilyn didn't even look at Maya. She just pointed a manicured finger toward my section. Maya nodded frantically and grabbed 2 menus. She led them through the dining room. The atmosphere around them changed as they walked. People stopped chewing to look. It wasn't because they were famous. It was because they were loud. Their presence was a demand for attention. Marilyn was commenting on the decor as she passed tables, her voice projecting. "A bit rustic, isn't it? I suppose some people find this charming. Very quaint." They reached table 12. It was the best table in my section, right by the window, bathed in that unforgiving, cinematic sunlight. I took a deep breath. I smoothed my apron. I checked my pocket to make sure my proof stack was still there, tucked safely in the back. I glanced at Evan, who was standing near the bar. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. I'm watching. I walked over. Good morning, I said. My voice was steady, professional. I placed the water pitcher on the table, careful not to let it clink. Welcome to Cedar and Salt. Marilyn was settling into her chair, fluffing her napkin with unnecessary drama. She didn't look up. She didn't say hello. She picked up the menu, opened it, and then, as if she had just realized there was a human being standing there, she looked at me. Her eyes scanned me. She started at my shoes sensible, black, non-slip. She moved up to my black slacks, my black button-down shirt, my apron stained with a tiny spot of coffee near the pocket. She looked at my face, which was devoid of makeup because I had been sweating for 3 hours. She made a face. It was a subtle scrunch of the nose, as if she had detected a bad smell. Oh, she said. The word was a weapon. It wasn't a greeting. It was a verdict. It is you, she continued, her voice rising just enough to ensure the table next to us, the nice couple with the baby, could hear. Still doing this honestly? Violet, how embarrassing. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, but I forced it down. I had practiced this. No yelling, no crying. Sloane was already seated. She had the phone propped up against the salt and pepper shakers now, angled perfectly to capture both of them and me standing by the table. Found my sister, Sloane said to the camera, her voice bright and chirpy. Literally serving tables. Wild. Can you guys believe this is how she spends her weekends? She glanced at me, then back at the phone, giving a conspiratorial eye roll to her audience. We try to tell her, but some people just settle. The table next to us went quiet. The young father stopped eating his eggs. The grandmother at table 10 turned her head. The ambient noise in our corner of the restaurant dropped, creating a vacuum of silence that amplified every word Marilyn said. People were pretending not to listen. They were looking at their plates, stirring their coffee, checking their watches, but they were listening. I could see it in the way their shoulders tensed. They were witnessing a public shaming, and they didn't know whether to intervene or watch the car crash. I looked at Sloane's phone. The screen was facing her. But from my angle, I could see the reflection in the window. There was a little red icon in the corner. Live. It wasn't a recording. It was a live stream, and the number next to the eye icon was climbing, 100, 200. Can I get you started with some drinks? I asked. Ignoring the comment, I kept my voice flat, refusing to give them the emotional reaction they were fishing for. Marilyn let out a sigh, dropping the menu onto the table with a slap. I don't know if I can eat, she said loudly. Seeing you like this, it just ruins my appetite. All that potential. Wasted. It breaks a mother's heart. It really does. She looked around the room, making eye contact with a woman at the next table, soliciting sympathy. You understand, don't you? You raise them. You give them everything. And they end up here. The woman she looked at didn't smile back. She looked down at her salad, uncomfortable. I'll have a mimosa, Sloane said, not looking up from her phone. Bottomless, and make sure it is not all juice. Last time it was basically orange juice. And I suppose I will have a white wine, Marilyn said. Something decent, if you have it, not the house wine. I don't want a headache. I will bring the wine list, I said. Don't bother. Marilyn waved her hand. Just bring me the Chardonnay, the most expensive one by the glass. Maybe that will help me tolerate this atmosphere. She gestured vaguely at me, at the restaurant, at the life I had built. I stood there for a second. I looked at Marilyn, preening in her hat. I looked at Sloane, monitoring her chat feed. They thought they were the queens of this little scene. They thought I was trapped. But they had made a mistake. They had brought an audience. Sloane's live stream wasn't just broadcasting their narrative. It was broadcasting the truth. And the truth was ugly. I saw the light blinking on the phone. Blink, blink, blink. It was a green light for me. I will get those drinks, I said. And before you order food, I should tell you something. I paused. I waited until Marilyn looked at me again, her eyebrows raised in annoyance. What now? She asked. Did you run out of specials? No, I said. I raised my voice slightly, projecting just enough so the nice family at table 11 and the grandmother at table 10 could hear me clearly. I wanted to let you know that today is my last day here. The hook was set. Now I just had to reel them in. And tomorrow, I added, my voice cutting through the sudden stillness of the dining room like a diamond cutter through glass. I start as a junior analyst at Crown Ridge Advisory Group. The reaction was immediate and visceral. It rippled outward from table 12 in a concentric wave. The young father at the next table froze with his fork halfway to his mouth. The grandmother at table 10 lowered her coffee cup with a soft clink. Even the kitchen noise seemed to dampen, as if the universe itself had paused to listen. Marilyn stared at me. Her mouth, usually so perfectly set in a line of disapproval, fell open just a fraction of an inch, for a second. I saw genuine confusion in her eyes. It was the look of a director whose actor had just gone completely off script in the middle of a live broadcast. Then, the confusion hardened into something ugly. It snapped back into the familiar shape of disdain. That is a lie, she stated. She didn't ask. She declared. Her voice was loud, sharp, and designed to shatter my credibility instantly. You are lying, Violet. You didn't even finish college. Sloane, sensing the shift in momentum, let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a nervous sound, but she covered it with a smirk. She adjusted her grip on the gimbal, angling the phone so that my face was center frame. She wanted to catch the panic. She wanted to catch the stutter. My sister likes pretending, Sloane told her audience, leaning into the microphone. She has always had this imagination. It is actually kind of sad. Imagine lying about a job at Crown Ridge while wearing a polyester apron. The chat must have been eating it up. I could imagine the comments. Delusional. Cringe. Why is she lying to her mom? I didn't look at the phone. I kept my eyes locked on Marilyn. I didn't flinch. I didn't step back. I stood my ground, planting my feet firmly on the sticky bistro floor. I did not drop out, I said calmly. I finished college full-time for 4 years. I graduated last week with honors. You just never asked. Oh, please, Marilyn scoffed. She turned to the table next to us, the young couple with the baby seeking allies. She tells these stories. She dropped out after 1 semester because she couldn't handle the pressure. I have the letter. My eyebrows went up. The letter? The suspension letter, Marilyn announced triumphantly. She reached into her oversized designer purse. She rummaged past a wallet that likely contained maxed-out credit cards and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was wrinkled, as if it had been carried around for a long time. She unfolded it and slapped it onto the table next to the water pitcher. I kept it, she said, her voice dripping with righteous vindication. Because I knew you would try to rewrite history one day. This is the notice from the dean's office. Academic suspension due to failure to maintain standards. Sent 3 years ago. I looked at the paper, even from where I stood. I could see the logo was pixelated. The font was Times New Roman, generic and blocky. It looked like something a high school student would forge to get out of a grounding. That is a fake, I said, and not even a good one. It is real, Marilyn snapped. I showed it to your aunt. I showed it to the neighbors. Everyone knows you failed. Violet, why are you doing this to yourself in public? The air in the room grew heavy. This was no longer just a family squabble. It was a trial. The diners around us were the jury. I could feel their gaze shifting back and forth between Marilyn's indignant confidence and my stoic denial. They didn't know who to believe. Marilyn looked the part of the concerned, wealthy mother. I looked like the tired waitress in their world. Waitresses didn't become investment bankers overnight. I saw the doubt in the eyes of the young father. I saw the pity returning to the grandmother's face. Marilyn was winning. She was using her volume and her prop to construct a reality where I was the liar. I could have shouted. I could have screamed that she was crazy. But that would have made me look unstable. Instead, I reached into the back pocket of my apron. If we are showing papers, I said, my voice dropping an octave, becoming deadly serious, then let us show papers. I pulled out my manila folder. It was crisp. It was clean. I opened it and pulled out the top document, my official offer letter from Crown Ridge Advisory Group, printed on heavy bond paper with the embossed watermark clearly visible even in the harsh sunlight. This is my offer letter, I said. Dated 2 weeks ago. Marilyn rolled her eyes. Anyone can print a piece of paper. Violet, it means nothing. You are right, I said. We are both biased. I say yours is fake. You say mine is fake. I turned my body away from them. I looked out into the dining room. I scanned the faces of the strangers who had been forced to witness this spectacle. I would like a volunteer, I said. The room was silent. Marilyn froze. Sloane's phone wavered slightly. This was not in the script. I need someone neutral, I continued, holding the letter up. Someone who has no reason to lie for me or for my mother. I need someone to read this out loud and tell us if it looks real. For 3 amazing seconds, no one moved. Then, a chair scraped against the floor at table 14. A man stood up. He was in his 60s, wearing a tweed jacket with leather patches on the elbows. He had wire-rimmed glasses and the weary, precise demeanor of a man who had spent 40 years staring at tax codes. He looked like a retired accountant or a librarian, someone who respected documentation. I will do it, he said. His voice was gravelly and authoritative. Thank you, sir, I said. I walked over to him. Marilyn made a noise in her throat, a strangled protest, but she didn't stop me. She couldn't. To stop me would be to admit fear. I handed the man the letter. He took it. He adjusted his glasses. He ran his thumb over the embossed logo at the top. He nodded to himself, recognizing the quality of the stationery. Read the header, please, I requested. Crown Ridge Advisory Group, he read. Headquarters, Financial District, Office of Human Resources. And the addressee? Ms. Violet Jenkins, he read clearly. And the first paragraph. The man looked up at Marilyn, then back at the paper. He cleared his throat. We are pleased to extend to you an offer of employment for the position of junior analyst within our Mergers and Acquisitions division. This offer is contingent upon the successful completion of your degree, which we have verified with the Registrar of Holloway Heights University. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush a car. Is there a salary listed? I asked softly. There is, the man said. He looked at me with a spark of respect in his eyes. Annual base salary of $85,000, plus a signing bonus of $10,000, effective upon your start date of May 14th. He handed the paper back to me. It is signed by Sarah Gable, Senior Director. I know the firm. This is a legitimate contract. Thank you, I said. I walked back to table 12. The change in Marilyn's face was terrifying. The smugness didn't just fade. It shattered. Her skin, usually flushed with self-importance, had turned a pasty, waxen gray. Her mouth worked soundlessly. She looked at the paper in my hand as if it were a radioactive isotope. She had spent 4 years building a monument to my failure. She had told everyone, her friends, her family, my sister, that I was a lost cause. She had used that narrative to justify cutting me off, to justify stealing my credit, to justify treating me like a servant. And in 30 seconds, a stranger in a tweed jacket had burned that monument to the ground. But it was Sloane who reacted first. She was staring at her phone screen. Her hands were shaking. The gimbal was wobbling, making the image sway sickeningly. Wait, she whispered. What? I glanced at her phone. The chat was moving so fast it was a blur of colors. I didn't need to read the individual comments to know what they were saying. The internet loves a villain, but it loves a receipt even more. The tide had turned. They weren't laughing at the waitress anymore. They were asking why the mother had a fake suspension letter. They were asking why the sister was mocking a junior analyst. The chat, Sloane muttered, panic creeping into her voice. They are asking if Mom forged that paper. They are calling her a liar. Marilyn snapped out of her stupor. She turned on Sloane. "Stop filming. I told you to stop filming." "I can't," Sloane hissed back, her eyes wide. "There are 4,000 people watching if I cut the feed now. It looks like guilt." "It is guilt," I said. I placed the offer letter gently on the table, right next to Marilyn's fake suspension notice. The contrast was poetic. Her paper was crinkled and sad. Mine was pristine. "You told everyone I dropped out so you wouldn't have to explain why you didn't help me," I said. My voice was low, for them alone, but I knew the phone was picking it up. "You needed me to be the failure so Sloane could be the success. But the math never worked. Mom, I was always better at math than you." Marilyn looked up at me. Her eyes were wet, but not with sorrow. They were wet with rage. She was cornered. She was humiliated. And she was dangerous. "You ungrateful little," she started, her voice shaking. "I gave you life. I gave you a home. You gave me a bill," I corrected her. "And I paid it. I paid it every single day I worked here." The room was still watching. The young father at the next table was openly glaring at Marilyn now. The grandmother was shaking her head in disgust. The verdict from the jury was in guilty. But I wasn't done. I had one more card to play, one more loose end to tie up. I turned my attention to Sloane. She was trying to salvage the stream. She was putting on a brave face, smiling shakily at the camera. "Guys, it is just a misunderstanding. My mom is just confused. She thought—" "Sloane," I said. She froze. She looked up at me. Beneath the layers of foundation and the false lashes, she looked very young and very scared. "Crown Ridge is a great company," I said. "The interview process is brutal. 4 rounds, case studies, psychological profiling." Sloane swallowed hard. "That is great for you, Violet." "I saw the application portal on your laptop," I said. Sloane's face went white. It was a rapid drain of color, faster than Marilyn's. Her eyes darted from me to the phone, then back to me. "I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered. "February," I said. "You posted a photo. You captioned it, 'Corporate Era.' You applied for the Marketing Associate program. Didn't you?" "No," she said too quickly. "I didn't. I am an influencer. I don't want a desk job." "You applied," I pressed, my voice gentle but relentless. "And you didn't get an interview, did you?" The silence from Sloane was louder than a scream. "You got the rejection email in March," I said. "I know because that is when they sent out the first round of cuts. That is why you stopped posting about your big plans. That is why you are here today, trying to make fun of me. Because if I am a loser waitress, then it doesn't hurt so much that you couldn't get into the place that just hired me." Sloane's hand dropped. The phone pointed at the table. She wasn't looking at the camera anymore. She was looking at her lap. "Is that true?" Marilyn asked. Her voice was shrill. She turned on her favorite daughter, her golden child. "Sloane, did you apply to Crown Ridge?" Sloane didn't answer. She bit her lip, tears welling up in her eyes. "You told me you didn't want corporate," Marilyn screeched. "You told me you were too creative for them. Did you lie to me?" "You pressure me," Sloane suddenly shouted, cracking under the weight of the moment. "You pressure me to be perfect. I didn't get in." "Okay, they said I didn't have the qualifications. Are you happy?" The confession hung in the air. The live stream was still running. The phone, resting on the table now, was broadcasting the ceiling, but the audio was crystal clear. 4,000 people just heard the golden child admit defeat. Marilyn looked between us. Her perfect tableau was destroyed. Her failure daughter was a success. Her success daughter was a rejected applicant. Her lies were exposed on a table for the world to see. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't joy. It was relief. It was the feeling of a heavy pack being lifted off my shoulders after a 4-year hike. "I will give you a moment," I said. I picked up my offer letter. I didn't leave it with them. It was mine. "I have other tables," I said. "And unlike you, I have a job to do." I turned and walked away. I walked past the man in the tweed jacket. He gave me a small, solemn nod. I nodded back. I walked to the POS station to check on my other tables. My hands were shaking, just a little, but my head was clear. I heard the murmur of the restaurant rising again, but the tone had changed. It wasn't the ambient noise of brunch anymore. It was the excited, hushed whispering of people who had just witnessed an execution. I glanced back at table 12. Marilyn and Sloane were arguing. Marilyn was gesturing wildly. Sloane was crying, holding her head in her hands. They were devouring each other. I took a deep breath of the kitchen air grease, coffee, and victory, but I knew it wasn't over. Marilyn Jenkins didn't retreat. When she was cornered, she lashed out, and she still had the credit card. She still had the generosity play. She would try to buy her dignity back. I checked the time, 11:45. The bill would be coming soon, and that was when the real bomb would go off. The aftermath of a confession is usually silence, but in the age of the internet, there is no such thing as silence. There is only the roar of the comment section. Sloane was wiping her eyes, her mascara smudging into dark, jagged streaks down her cheeks. She had just screamed the truth that she had been rejected by the very company that had just hired me, but her survival instinct kicked in almost instantly. She grabbed the phone from the table, her hands trembling so violently that the gimbal motor whirred in protest. "I was joking," she stammered into the camera, her voice pitching up into a frantic, breathless squeak. "Oh my God. You guys, I was totally joking. I didn't actually want that job. It was a social experiment. I wanted to see how the corporate hiring process discriminates against creatives. It was for a video essay." She was backpedaling so fast she was practically tripping over her own tongue. She looked at the screen, desperate for validation, desperate for the stream of hearts and laughing emojis that usually fueled her existence. But the screen wasn't giving her hearts. I stood close enough to see the chat waterfalling upward. It wasn't a stream anymore. It was a deluge. The comments were flying by so fast they were unreadable. A blur of text, but the general sentiment was unmistakable. The emojis weren't laughing faces. They were skulls. They were snakes. They were red flags. Liar. She is so jealous. Team Violet. The waitress is the main character. Imagine bullying your sister for having a job you couldn't get. Cancelled. "I am not lying," Sloane shrieked at the phone, her composure completely disintegrating. "Why are you guys being so mean? You don't know the whole story. My sister is manipulating you." "I am not the one holding the camera. Sloane," I said quietly. The chat exploded again. People were screen recording. I could see the notifications popping up on the top of her screen. Twitter mentions, TikTok tags. The hashtag #MeanGirl was already starting to trend in her local geofence. The internet is a cruel judge, but it is a fast one. They had seen the smirk. They had seen the mockery. And now they were seeing the desperate, flailing cover-up. "You posted the application confirmation in February," I reminded her, my voice cutting through her panic. "You cropped the top of the email so people wouldn't see the role was marketing associate, because you wanted them to think it was something higher. You captioned it, 'Big things coming.' You even used the sparkle emoji." Sloane froze. She stared at me with genuine horror. She had forgotten that I followed her. She had forgotten that I saw everything. I didn't. "I recognized the portal layout," a voice spoke up from the table behind me. I turned. It was a young woman in a business suit, eating a Cobb salad alone. She had been watching the scene with the intensity of someone watching a car crash. "I applied to Crown Ridge last year," the woman said, looking directly at Sloane. "Their portal is blue and slate gray with that specific serif font, and the confirmation email always comes at 4 a.m. because their server is in London. You don't fake that. And you definitely don't apply as a joke. That application takes 3 hours. The verification hit Sloane like a physical blow. The last shred of her social experiment lie evaporated. The woman at the table wasn't a troll in the chat. She was a real person, right here, confirming that Sloane was a fraud. Marilyn, who had been sitting in stunned silence since Sloane's outburst, suddenly seemed to realize that the heat was no longer on me. It was on her legacy. It was on her golden child. She turned on Sloane with the speed of a viper. "You lied to me," Marilyn hissed. Her voice was low, dangerous. "You told me you turned them down. You told me the offer wasn't enough money." "Mom, please," Sloane whispered, trying to angle the phone away from Marilyn, but it was too late. The microphone caught everything. "I told my book club you were too good for entry level," Marilyn continued, her face flushing a deep, angry crimson. "I told your aunt that you were building an empire, and you were just rejected." "I didn't want to disappoint you," Sloane cried. "You make everything such a big deal if I'm not perfect. You don't even look at me." "I look at you because you are supposed to be the one with the future," Marilyn snapped. "Violet is the one who washes dishes. You are supposed to be the one on the magazine covers." The cruelty of the statement hung in the air. Marilyn hadn't just insulted me. She had admitted, out loud, exactly how she viewed her daughters. One was a trophy, the other was a tool. The chat went nuclear. I saw the viewer count jump from 4,000 to 6,000 in 10 seconds. People were sharing the stream. "Mom of the Year just dropped the mask." Someone commented. I looked at them. I looked at my mother, whose face was twisted in a snarl of disappointment, and my sister, who was crumbling under the weight of her own manufactured reality. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel the urge to laugh or gloat. I felt a profound, aching pity. They were so empty. They were so terrified of being ordinary that they had destroyed themselves trying to be exceptional. "It is okay to be rejected. Sloane," I said. My voice was soft, but in the silence of their implosion, it carried. Sloane looked up at me, her eyes red and puffy. She looked like a child again. "It happens to everyone," I continued. "I got rejected from 10 jobs before I got Crown Ridge. It is not a character flaw. It is just life." I took a step closer to the table. I wasn't serving them anymore. I was lecturing them. "But it is not okay to make me your content," I said. "It is not okay to use my life, my job, and my struggles as a prop for your engagement numbers. I am not a background character in your show. I am a real person, and I am done being the punchline." Sloane's phone buzzed, a long, sustained vibration. Then another, then another. She glanced down. "Oh no," she whispered. "What?" Marilyn demanded. "Is it your father?" "It is the protein shake brand," Sloane said, her voice trembling. "They just commented. 'We do not align with bullying behavior. Please remove our link from your bio immediately.'" "What does that mean?" Marilyn asked, confusion warring with her anger. "It means I am losing the sponsorship, Mom." Sloane wailed. "That is $500 a month. And oh God, the skincare company just tagged me. They are reviewing our partnership." Her digital empire was collapsing in real time. The brands she had carefully courted, the image she had curated, it was all dissolving because she couldn't resist the urge to punch down. Marilyn saw the panic in Sloane's eyes and realized the ship was sinking. She did what she always did when she was losing control. She played the victim. She tried to flip the board. She slammed her hand onto the table, making the silverware jump. "This is unacceptable," she shouted. She looked around the room, her eyes wide and manic, trying to rally the audience that had already convicted her. "My daughter is disrespecting me on Mother's Day. Is this how you treat customers? Is this how you treat your family?" She pointed a shaking finger at me. "You planned this. You ambushed us. You jealous, vindictive little girl. You wanted to humiliate your sister because she is beautiful and you are this." She gestured at my apron, at my uniform. "I am a customer," Marilyn screamed. "I demand respect. I demand to see a manager right now." "You don't have to shout," a deep voice said from behind me. I stepped aside. Evan Rowe was standing there. He wasn't wearing his usual relaxed expression. He was standing tall, his arms crossed over his chest, his face set in stone. He looked at Marilyn, then at Sloane, then at the phone that was still broadcasting the meltdown. "I am the manager," Evan said. "And I've been standing right there for 10 minutes. Marilyn's face lit up with false hope. "Good, finally you need to fire this girl. She is harassing us. She is causing a scene. She is lying about her employment to make us look bad." Evan didn't blink. "I have watched Violet work here for 4 years. Ma'am, she has never caused a scene in her life. Until you walked in." Marilyn sputtered. "Excuse me, I am the victim here. She is attacking my family." "She is defending herself," Evan corrected her. His voice was calm but firm, the voice of a man who had dealt with drunk college students and angry chefs for 20 years. "And frankly, she is doing it with a lot more grace than I would have." He stepped closer to the table. He looked directly into the camera lens of Sloane's phone. "You are filming on private property," Evan said, "and you are disturbing my other guests. Look around you." Marilyn and Sloane looked. The entire restaurant was staring, but they weren't staring with curiosity anymore. They were staring with hostility. The young father was shaking his head. The woman with the salad was filming them back. The atmosphere had shifted completely. It wasn't a family drama anymore. It was a public nuisance. "I have watched you insult my staff," Evan said, turning his gaze back to Marilyn. "I heard you call her embarrassing. I heard you mock her job. This is a place of business, not a reality TV set. We have a zero-tolerance policy for harassment. That includes family." "You can't talk to me like that," Marilyn said, clutching her pearls. "I am Marilyn Jenkins. I know people in this town." "I don't care who you are," Evan said. "You are making my server cry. Or, well, you are trying to." He looked at me. I wasn't crying. I was standing tall, dry-eyed and steady. "Violet," Evan said, "do you want them removed?" The question hung in the air. I looked at Marilyn. She looked small now, huddled in her expensive suit, her face a mask of shock. She had never been told no by a service worker in her life. She had certainly never been threatened with eviction from a restaurant. I looked at Sloane. She was frantically typing on her phone, trying to delete comments, trying to save the sinking ship, ignoring the reality in front of her. I could have kicked them out. I could have told Evan to drag them out the door while the whole restaurant cheered. It would have been satisfying, but I had a better idea. If they left now, they could spin the story later. They could say they were victimized. They could say the manager was rude. I needed them to stay. I needed them to eat the meal they had ordered. I needed them to sit in the mess they had made. And I needed them to pay the bill. "No," I said to Evan. "Let them stay." Marilyn let out a breath, her eyes flashing with a momentary triumph. She thought I had blinked. She thought I had backed down. "Fine," she sniffed, straightening her jacket. "At least someone has some sense." "But," I added, raising a finger, "here is how it is going to work." I leaned in. I placed my hands on the edge of the table. "You are going to put the phone away," I said to Sloane. "Now." Sloane hesitated. "Put it away," I repeated. "Or Evan kicks you out, and you can explain to your followers why you got banned from a local business for harassment." Sloane swallowed. She tapped the screen. End stream. She lowered the phone and shoved it into her purse. I turned to Marilyn. "You ordered drinks," I said. "You haven't ordered food yet. If you want to stay, you can order, but you will do it politely. You will say please and thank you. And you will not say one single word about my job, my college, or my life. You will eat quietly, or you will leave." Marilyn stared at me. Her mouth worked, trying to find a retort, trying to find an insult that would cut me down to size. But she had nothing. I had stripped her of her audience. I had stripped her of her narrative. She started. "Quietly," I said, "or leave." The silence stretched for 5 seconds. It was a test of wills. Marilyn looked at Evan, who was standing with his arms crossed, ready to escort her out. She looked at the other tables, who were watching her with judgment. She looked at me, her daughter, who was suddenly a stranger she didn't recognize. She picked up the menu. She opened it. She didn't look at me. "I will have the Cobb salad," she muttered. "Dressing on the side." "Please," I prompted. Marilyn's hand tightened on the menu until her knuckles turned white. Her jaw worked. "Please," she whispered. Thank you, I said. And for you, Sloan. Sloan didn't look up. Avocado toast. Please. Coming right up, I said. I gathered the menus. I turned to Evan. I got this. I told him. Evan nodded. He looked impressed. He patted me on the shoulder as he walked away. Holler if the vibe changes. I walked back toward the kitchen. The adrenaline was starting to fade, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. They were trapped. They were sitting at table 12, surrounded by people who knew exactly who they were, forced to eat a meal served by the daughter they had tormented. But the trap wasn't fully sprung yet. Marilyn had ordered the wine. She would order dessert. She would try to buy back the room's affection. She would try to be the generous matriarch to save face. She didn't know that I had frozen my credit 12 hours ago. She didn't know that the credit card in her purse, the one she used to project her wealth, was essentially a piece of plastic connected to a dead end. I punched in the order at the computer. Table 12, Cobb salad, avocado toast, Chardonnay, mimosas. I hit send. The kitchen printer buzzed. It was the sound of the end. I looked back at the dining room. Marilyn was smiling at a passing waiter, trying to regain her composure, trying to act like nothing had happened. She was about to launch her generosity trap. She was about to try to buy the room. I couldn't wait to bring her the check. Marilyn Jenkins had a superpower. It was not flight, and it was certainly not self-awareness. It was the ability to weaponize her own wallet. Whenever she felt her control slipping, whenever the narrative of her life threatened to veer off into territory she found unpalatable, she did not apologize. She did not reflect. She spent money. She bought compliance. She bought silence. And today, sitting at table 12 with the wreckage of her reputation smoldering around her, she decided she was going to buy the room. She picked at her Cobb salad for exactly 3 minutes. The silence at the table was heavy, a suffocating blanket of tension that even the ambient noise of the bistro could not penetrate. Sloan was staring at her phone screen, her thumb hovering over the Go Live button, terrified to press it, but terrified not to. The chat from the previous stream had ended in flames. But the internet has a short memory, or so they hoped. Marilyn took a sip of her Chardonnay. She looked around the section. She saw the grandmother at table 10 glancing at her with disapproval. She saw the young father at table 11 whispering to his wife. She felt the judgment on her skin like a rash. She set her wine glass down with a sharp clack. "This is ridiculous," she announced. She sat up straighter, adjusting the fascinator on her head. "I will not be looked at like a villain. I am a mother. I am a provider." She snapped her fingers. "Violet?" I was standing at the service station, entering an order for an iced tea. I finished the keystroke, turned, and walked over. I did not rush. I walked with the measured pace of someone who is paid by the hour. "Yes," I asked. "I want to do something nice," Marilyn said loudly. She pitched her voice to Carrie, projecting to the back row. "Since it is Mother's Day, and since we are so blessed, I think it is only right that we share our good fortune." She waved her hand in a grand, sweeping gesture that encompassed my entire section. "We will treat the section today," she declared. "Dessert is on me, for everyone." Sloane's head snapped up. "Mom?" "Hush," Marilyn hissed out of the side of her mouth. Then she beamed at me, a smile that was all teeth and desperation. "You heard me. Violet, tell these lovely people that Marilyn Jenkins is buying dessert for the entire section. Whatever they want, the tiramisu, the cheesecake, the chocolate lava cake, put it all on my tab." It was a classic Marilyn move, the generosity trap. She was trying to force the strangers who had just witnessed her cruelty to thank her. She was buying their applause because she couldn't earn their respect. In the past, I would have tried to stop her. I would have whispered, "Mom, that is too expensive." Or, "Mom, you do not have to do that." I would have tried to protect her from her own financial recklessness. But today was my last day. And I wasn't her shield anymore. I smiled. It was a bright, professional, and absolutely lethal smile. "That is so kind of you," I said, matching her volume. What a generous gesture. I turned to the room. I didn't just tell the tables individually, I made an announcement. I commanded the floor like a ringmaster. Ladies and gentlemen in Section 4, I said, my voice clear and carrying over the brunch chatter. I have some wonderful news. My mother, Marilyn, would like to buy dessert for everyone seated in this section today as a Mother's Day gift. The reaction was instantaneous. The grandmother at table 10, who had a sweet tooth I had already noted, clasped her hands together. Oh, my goodness, really? Really, I confirmed. Anything on the dessert menu, compliments of the Jenkins family. Well, that is just lovely, the grandmother said, beaming at Marilyn. The judgment in her eyes evaporated, replaced by the simple joy of free sugar. Thank you, dear. That is so sweet of you. You are very welcome, Marilyn called back, waving regally. She was drinking it in, the validation, the sudden shift from mean mom to benevolent matriarch. The young father at table 11 looked surprised. Wow, thanks. That is hey. Honey, you wanted the cheesecake, right? Get the cheesecake, Marilyn insisted, leaning toward them. Get two. It is a celebration. Sloane, Marilyn whispered, kicking her daughter under the table. Turn the camera back on. Now. Mom, Sloane whispered back, her voice tight with panic. Stop. This is going to be expensive. The lava cake is $12. There are 20 people in this section. I said turn it on, Marilyn hissed through her frozen smile. We need to fix the narrative. Show them I am generous. Show them I am treating everyone. Sloane hesitated, then tapped the screen. The familiar red live indicator blinked back to life. We are back, guys, Sloane said, forcing a bright, brittle enthusiasm into her voice. Sorry about the connection issues earlier, but look at this. My mom is literally buying dessert for the whole restaurant right now. She is so extra. I love it. The chat started scrolling again. I could see the reflection in the window. Wait, she is buying everyone food. Okay, that is kind of nice. Maybe we judged too harsh. Rich mom energy. Marilyn saw Sloane nodding at the screen and relaxed. It was working. She was buying her way out of the hole. Violet, Marilyn said, her confidence surging back. Bring me the dessert menu, and bring another bottle of Chardonnay, the reserve label this time. And oh, bring us the Grand Seafood Tower. We should have something to nibble on while people eat their sweets. The Seafood Tower is $150, I said neutrally. Did I ask the price? Marilyn laughed, a shrill sound that grated on my nerves. Just bring it. We are celebrating your new job, aren't we? She didn't mean it. She was just using my job as an excuse to flex her spending power for the camera. Of course, I said. Right away. I walked to the POS terminal. Evan was standing there, watching the scene with a look of fascination and horror. Did she just offer to buy dessert for 6 tables? Evan asked. Yes, I said, punching in the code for the Seafood Tower. And a bottle of the Rombauer. Yes, Evan let out a low whistle. That is going to push the bill over $600. Violet. I know, I said. She wants to look rich for the live stream. Evan tapped the screen of my terminal. He navigated to the gratuity settings. I am locking in the autograt, he said quietly. 20% on the total bill, including the treats for the other tables. Policy states that for large parties or hosted events, gratuity is automatic. This counts as a hosted event. Good, I said. Make sure it is printed clearly on the receipt. Oh, it will be? Evan said. I am not letting you walk out of here on your last day without your tip. But Violet is the card going to run. I remember last time she was here. She had to try 2 different cards. I looked at Evan. I could have told him. I could have told him that I had frozen my credit files 18 hours ago. I could have told him that the authorized user card Marilyn was undoubtedly planning to use the one with my name on the account, but her spending habits attached to it was currently a useless piece of plastic. But I didn't. I wanted the moment. I wanted the decline. We will find out, I said simply. I went back to work, and I worked perfectly. For the next 30 minutes, I was the embodiment of service excellence. I delivered slices of cheesecake with drizzled raspberry sauce. I brought ramekins of creme brulee with the sugar perfectly torched. I poured wine with one hand behind my back, catching the last drop on a linen napkin before it could stain the tablecloth. "Here is your chocolate torte, sir," I said to the man in the tweed jacket. "Thank you," he said. He glanced over at table 12. Marilyn was currently posing with a lobster claw while Sloane took a photo. "Your mother is quite a character." "She certainly is," I agreed. "You handle her well," he observed. "Crownridge is lucky to have you. Patience is a rare commodity in finance." "Thank you," I said. Every time I dropped a dessert at a table, the guests would look over at Marilyn and wave or call out a thank you, and every time, Marilyn would wave back, looking more and more like a benevolent queen on her throne. She was high on the attention. She was drunk on the validation, but Sloane looked sick. She wasn't eating the seafood. She was watching the comments, and she was doing mental math. I walked by their table to refill the water glasses. "Everything tasting okay?" I asked. "It is fine," Marilyn said, waving a crab leg. "The lobster is a bit tough, but I suppose that is what you get in a suburban bistro." "I will let the chef know," I said. "Mom," Sloane whispered, her voice barely audible over the restaurant noise. "The chat is weird. People are asking why you are buying dessert, but you wouldn't pay for Violet's college." Marilyn froze. The crab leg stopped halfway to her mouth. "What?" she snapped. "Someone scrolled back and found Violet's old Facebook post about student loans," Sloane muttered. "Now they are saying this is a guilt tax. They are saying you are love-bombing the room." Marilyn's face flushed. The generosity trap had a second layer she hadn't anticipated. "You can buy applause in the room, but you can't buy the internet. The internet dissects." "Ignore them," Marilyn commanded. "They are just jealous poor people. Keep filming. Look happy." She raised her wine glass to the camera. "Cheers." "Cheers to family," she announced aggressively. The chat, which I could see from the angle of the phone, was scrolling fast. Why is she trying so hard? The waitress is doing all the work while the mom eats lobster. This feels dystopian. Team Violet. Look at her hustle. I moved to the next table. I cleared plates. I crumbed the table. I was efficient. I was silent. My competence was the mirror reflecting Marilyn's chaos. The more she tried to perform, the more unhinged she looked against the backdrop of my steady professionalism. "Can we get the check?" Marilyn called out, interrupting me while I was taking a drink order at table 14. "We have places to be. Sloane has a meeting." "Of course," I said. "I will bring it right out." I walked to the terminal. I pulled up table 12. I looked at the total. The appetizers, the entrees, the bottomless mimosas, the reserve Chardonnay, the grand seafood tower, the 12 desserts for the surrounding tables. The subtotal was $740, with tax. It went up to $800, with the 20% automatic gratuity that Evan had locked in. The total came to $960. It was almost $1,000 for a brunch. It was an obscene amount of money. It was more than Marilyn had given me for my birthday in the last 10 years combined. It was more than she claimed she had when I asked for help with my textbooks freshman year. I printed the receipt. The paper was long. It curled as it came out of the machine. I placed it in the black leather folder. I grabbed a pen. My heart should have been racing. I should have been nervous. This was the moment of impact. But I felt nothing but a cold, heavy certainty. I was the pilot dropping the payload. The coordinates were set. I walked back to the table. Marilyn was reapplying her lipstick in the reflection of her spoon. Sloane was finally ending the stream, looking exhausted and defeated. "Here is the check," I said. I placed the folder on the table, right next to the empty lobster shells. "No rush," I added. "Whenever you are ready." Marilyn didn't even look at it. She reached into her purse. She didn't pull out cash. She didn't pull out a debit card. She pulled out the Platinum Rewards card, the heavy one, the one that made a satisfying noise when you dropped it on the table. I recognized it immediately. It was the card she had added me to as an authorized user 5 years ago for emergencies, but had never actually given me the card for. It was the card tied to my credit file, the card she had been running up debt on, using my good credit score to keep the limit high. She slapped the card onto the folder without opening it. "Just run it," she said dismissively, "and add 10% for yourself. Don't say I never gave you anything." She said it with such casual arrogance. She thought she was tossing me a crumb. She thought she was being magnanimous by tipping me 10% on a bill she had bloated with performative charity. She didn't know the autograt was already there, and she certainly didn't know what the machine was about to say. "I will take care of this right now," I said. I picked up the folder. I picked up the card. It felt cold in my hand. I walked back to the terminal. I could feel Marilyn's eyes on my back. She was already mentally moving on, planning her exit, planning how she would caption the photos of the seafood tower. I swiped the card. The machine thought for a moment. The little hourglass spun. Processing, I waited. Processing. And then, the message flashed on the screen in bright red letters. Declined. Code 05. Do not honor. I stared at it. It wasn't just a limit decline. It was a security freeze decline. The bank had tried to ping the credit bureau, hit the wall I had built last night, and shut the transaction down instantly to prevent potential fraud. I smiled. A real smile this time. I tried it again. Just to be thorough. Declined. I tried it a third time. Declined. I turned around. Marilyn was laughing at something Sloane had said. She looked happy. She looked safe. I picked up the folder. I walked back to the table. The silence was about to get a lot louder. The black leather folder felt heavier than it looked. It sat on the table between the lobster shells and the empty wine glasses. A silent grenade waiting to detonate. Marilyn was still riding the high of her performance. She was dabbing the corner of her mouth with a linen napkin, looking out at the dining room like a queen surveying her subjects. The grandmother at table 10 raised a forkful of cheesecake in a silent toast. Marilyn inclined her head graciously. She had bought their love, or so she thought. She had purchased her redemption with a plastic rectangle she assumed had no bottom. "Here's the bill," I said. My voice was devoid of inflection. Marilyn didn't even look at me. She opened the folder with a casual flick of her wrist. She expected a number. Sure, she knew it would be high, but she wasn't prepared for the reality of the math. Her eyes scanned down the slip of paper. I watched her pupils dilate. She saw the appetizers. She saw the reserve wine. She saw the seafood tower. And then she saw the line item that changed everything. Guest hospitality, Section 4. And below that automatic gratuity, 20%. The total was $960.45. For a split second, the mask slipped. The benevolent matriarch vanished, replaced by a woman who was mentally calculating how many months of interest payments this represented. Her jaw tightened. A small vein pulsed in her temple. "The gratuity is included?" she asked, her voice tight. 20%. That seems excessive for a buffet service. "It is standard policy for large parties and hosted events," I said. "You hosted the section." Evan approved it. She glared at me. But she couldn't argue. Not with the grandmother watching. Not with the young father smiling at her. She was trapped in the cage of her own generosity. "Fine," she snapped. She pulled the platinum card from her purse, the heavy metal one that clattered when it hit the table. "Just run it, and be quick about it. We are leaving." I picked up the folder. I picked up the card. "I will be right back." I walked to the terminal. It was only 20 feet away, but it felt like miles. The restaurant was loud, but my head was quiet. I was focused. I swiped the card. The machine hummed. Processing. I waited. The anticipation was a physical weight in my stomach. Beep. The screen flashed red. Declined. I wasn't surprised. I had expected it, but seeing it in neon pixelated letters gave me a surge of cold satisfaction. I printed the rejection slip. I walked back to the table. "I am sorry," I said, loud enough for Sloane to hear, but quiet enough to keep the neighbors out of it for now. The card was declined, Marilyn laughed. It was a nervous, dismissive sound. Don't be silly. It is a platinum card. There is no limit. You probably swiped it wrong. The magnetic strip is sensitive. I swiped it 3 times, I lied smoothly. It is a hard decline. Code 05. Marilyn snatched the card back. Her face was flushing pink, clashing with her pastel suit. That is impossible. I just used it yesterday for gas. Maybe the gas station put a hold on it, I suggested helpfully. Do you have another form of payment? Of course I do, she hissed. She began digging through her purse. The calm demeanor was cracking. She pulled out a second card, a gold one this time. Use this one, and wipe the chip first. Your machines are probably dirty. I will try, I said. I took the gold card. I walked back to the terminal. Evan was standing there now, his arms crossed, watching the scene unfold. Strike one? He asked. Strike one. I confirmed. I inserted the gold card. I watched the screen. Processing beep. Declined. I looked at Evan. He raised an eyebrow. Run it again, he said. Just to be sure. I ran it again. Declined. I printed the second rejection slip. I walked back to the table. This time, I didn't lower my voice quite as much. This one was declined too. Mom, I said. The air around table 12 instantly changed. Sloane, who had been busy deleting negative comments on her phone, looked up. Her eyes went wide. Mom, she whispered. Marilyn looked at the second card as if it had bitten her. This is ridiculous, she announced, her voice rising to that dangerous pitch she used when she wanted to speak to a manager. Your system is broken. That is what it is. Your internet is down. The system is working fine, I said calmly. I just ran a card for table 14. It went through instantly. Well, it is rejecting mine. Marilyn slammed her hand on the table. This is embarrassing. Violet, fix it. I can't fix a bank decline. Mom, I said. Do you have a third card? People were looking now. The grandmother at table 10 had stopped eating her cheesecake. The generosity trap was turning into a spectacle. The woman who had just bought the room dessert couldn't pay for her own wine. Marilyn was frantic now. She upended her purse on the table. Lipstick, receipts, and mints spilled out. She found a third card, a blue one, a basic rewards card that looked old and worn. Try this, she commanded, shoving it at me. And use a different terminal. That one is clearly defective. I will take it to the bar terminal, I said. I walked to the bar. Evan followed me. I could feel the eyes of the entire restaurant on my back. The murmurs were starting. Is her card declining? She bought us all this food and she can't pay. Awkward. I ran the blue card at the bar station. Beep. Declined. Pickup card. Wow, Evan said softly. That is a pickup code. That means the bank wants the card back. That is serious. I know, I said. I didn't take the card back to her immediately. I stood there for a second, letting the reality sink in. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. I pulled it out. It was a notification from my credit monitoring app, the one I had installed 24 hours ago. Alert. High-value transaction blocked. Merchant Cedar and Salt Bistro. Amount $960.45. Reason credit freeze active. I stared at the screen. I had suspected it. I had feared it. But seeing it in black and white was different. The cards Marilyn was using the platinum, the gold. The blue were not hers. Not really. They were cards she had opened, or cards she had added herself to, using my credit profile. When I was 18, Marilyn had helped me set up a bank account. She had asked for my social security number, my signature on a few forms. She told me it was to build my history. She told me it was for my future. She had been building a history. All right, a history of debt that she leveraged to keep her own lifestyle afloat while telling me I was too poor to go to college. She had been living on credit that was tied to my name, using my clean slate to offset her own financial ruin. And because I had frozen my files last night, locking down everything, preventing any new authorizations or large, unusual activity on accounts linked to my social. The bank's fraud algorithm had finally done its job. It saw a massive charge on a card linked to a frozen profile and slammed the gate shut. The wealth she was flashing around was mine. It was my future she was eating. I put the phone back in my pocket. I felt a coldness spread through my chest that was absolute. It wasn't anger anymore. It was clarity. I walked back to the table. I didn't bring the folder this time. I just held the blue card. It declined, I said. Marilyn stood up. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. This is harassment. You are doing this on purpose. You are manually rejecting them. Sit down, Evan said. He had appeared beside me, his voice low and hard. You are disturbing the other guests. Your machine is broken, Marilyn shouted. She was cornered. She was panicking. I have money. I have plenty of money. Mom, Sloane whispered. She was pale, clutching her napkin. Mom, did you ignore the bank alert again? Marilyn whipped her head around. Shut up. Just shut up. Sloane? You got a letter last week, Sloane pressed, her voice trembling. From the bank. You threw it away. You said it was spam. Mom, is the money gone? I said shut up, Marilyn hissed. The money isn't gone. I said. They both looked at me. The credit is frozen, I said. Marilyn froze. She looked at me with the expression of a deer staring down the barrel of a rifle. She knew what that meant. She knew that I knew. I got a notification just now, I said. Pulling my phone back out, I held it up so she could see the screen. Transaction blocked, credit freeze active, identity protection protocol. I looked her in the eye. I froze my credit last night. Mom, all 3 bureaus, Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. I locked them down tight. Marilyn's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She sank back into her chair. That is why the cards are declining, I said. Because they are linked to my social security number, aren't they? The silence at table 12 was absolute. The silence at the tables around us was absolute. The grandmother at table 10 had her hand over her mouth. You froze it, Marilyn whispered. I found the accounts 3 days ago, I said. When Crown Ridge ran my background check, they flagged 3 cards with high utilization rates. Cards I never opened. Cards sent to your address. I was building your credit, Marilyn blurted out, the lie tumbling out of her mouth from sheer habit. I was helping you. I paid the minimums. I was managing it for you because you are so irresponsible with money. Irresponsible, I repeated. I let the word hang there. You called me irresponsible for 4 years. You told everyone I was bad with money. You told me I couldn't afford college. You told me I needed to work double shifts to learn the value of $1. I leaned in closer. You needed me to think I was broke, I said softly. You needed me to stay confused. You needed me to be too scared to check my own credit report, because if I checked, I would see that you were wearing my credit score like a costume. Marilyn looked away. She couldn't meet my eyes. She looked at the expensive seafood tower that was slowly getting warm. She looked at the empty wine bottle. She looked at Sloane, who was staring at her with horror. You used my name, Sloane whispered. Mom, did you use mine too? Marilyn didn't answer. That was answer enough. The reality of the situation washed over the room. The generosity trap had snapped, but it hadn't caught me. It had caught Marilyn. She had tried to buy the room's adoration with money she stole from her own daughter. That is fraud, the man in the tweed jacket said from table 14. He wasn't looking at his dessert anymore. He was looking at Marilyn with the cold, hard eyes of a former auditor. That is identity theft, and it is a felony. Marilyn flinched. The word felony cut through her delusion like a knife. Evan stepped forward. He wasn't just a manager anymore. He was the enforcer of reality. Okay, Evan said. Here is where we stand. He picked up the check folder. The bill is $960.45, Evan said. We have run 3 cards. All 3 have been declined by the issuer for security reasons. We have a confession of credit tampering, or at least a very strong suggestion of it, witnessed by 20 people. He looked at Marilyn. I cannot accept a check, Evan said. And obviously, I cannot accept these cards, given the behavior today and the size of the bill. He paused. I need cash, Evan said. Right now, or I call the police and we sort this out with a fraud report. Marilyn gasped. Police, you wouldn't. I am a mother. It is Mother's Day. Then pay the bill, Evan said. Cash, or a direct wire transfer if you can manage it on your phone, but nobody leaves this table until the balance is zero. I don't carry that kind of cash, Marilyn cried. Who carries $1,000 in cash? Then call someone, I said. I stood up straight. I untied my apron. Call Aunt Linda, I suggested. Or maybe one of your tennis friends. Call them and tell them you need $1,000 to bail you out of a brunch because you committed identity theft against your daughter. I folded my apron. I placed it on the back of the empty chair. I am sure they will be very sympathetic, I added. Marilyn looked at me. Her eyes were wet, pleading. She looked old. The makeup couldn't hide the fear anymore. The expensive suit looked like a costume she had rented. Violet, she whispered, please, don't do this. Everyone is watching. You wanted them to watch, I said. You wanted an audience. Mom, you brought the camera. You made the speech. You invited the attention. I gestured to the room, to the grandmother, the young father, the businesswoman, the man in tweed. This is your show, I said. I am just the waitress. I looked at Evan. I am clocking out. Go ahead. Violet, Evan said. I will handle the payment. I didn't wait to see if she found the cash. I didn't wait to see if Sloane had any money in her own account. I turned my back on table 12. I walked toward the kitchen. My legs felt light. My chest felt open. The air in the restaurant tasted different. It tasted like truth. Behind me, I heard Sloane start to sob. It was a high, thin sound of absolute humiliation. I heard Marilyn arguing with Evan, her voice shrill and desperate, trying to bargain, trying to explain, trying to rewrite a story that had already been published. But I kept walking. I pushed through the swinging doors into the kitchen, the noise of the dining room cut off, replaced by the hum of the dishwashers and the sizzle of the grill. You okay? Vi, Tessa asked. She was standing at the salad station, holding a pair of tongs. She had seen the whole thing through the pass-through window. Yeah, I said. I am okay. Did she really? Tessa trailed off, gesturing vaguely toward the dining room. Yeah, I said. She really did. Damn, Tessa said. That is cold. It is over, I said. I walked to the time clock. I punched in my code. 1055. The machine beeped. Clock out. Total hours 4.5. It was a short shift, but it was the longest morning of my life. I walked to the locker room. I took off my non-slip shoes and put on my sneakers. I took my bag from the locker, the bag with the offer letter, the bag with my future inside it. I walked out the back door into the alley. The sun was high overhead. It was a beautiful day. The sky was a piercing, impossible blue. I took a deep breath. I had walked into the bistro as a daughter, a victim, a servant. I was walking out as something else entirely. I walked to my car. I didn't look back at the bistro windows. I didn't need to see them scrambling for cash. I didn't need to see the police arriving. If it came to that, I had served my time. I had my hand on the handle of my car door, the metal hot against my palm under the midday sun. When I heard the back door of the restaurant slam open against the brick wall, I didn't have to look to know who it was. The frantic clicking of heels on the asphalt gave her away. Violet. Violet, stop. I paused. I took a breath of the fresh air, filling my lungs with the scent of pine trees and exhaust. Before I turned around, Marilyn was running toward me. Her hat was crooked. Her mascara was starting to run in the humidity. She looked less like a queen and more like a desperate woman trying to outrun an avalanche she had started herself. Sloane was trailing behind her. holding her phone against her chest, her face streaked with tears that for once were not staged for a thumbnail. Marilyn reached me and grabbed my arm. Her grip was tight, shaking. "You cannot just leave," she panted. "You cannot leave us there. Evan is threatening to call the police. The police, Violet. Do you have any idea what that would do to our reputation, to Sloane's career?" I looked at her hand on my arm. I looked at her face. For the first time in my life, I didn't see the terrifying matriarch who controlled the weather in our house. I just saw a woman who was bad with money and worse with people. "I am not the one who ordered a seafood tower I couldn't pay for," I said calmly. "And I am not the one who committed identity fraud. I was going to pay it back," Marilyn pleaded. Her voice cracked, losing its polished veneer. "Violet, please, don't do this to me. I am your mother. You only have one mother. If they file a report, I could go to jail. Do you want your mother in jail?" She was playing the guilt card, the ace she had kept up her sleeve for 24 years. She expected me to fold. She expected me to sigh, open my own banking app, and transfer the savings I had scraped together from 4 years of double shifts to save her skin. But the bank wasn't the only thing that was frozen. "I am not doing this to you," I said. My voice was steady, quiet, and final. "You did this to yourself. You have been doing it to yourself for years. You just usually do it in private where I can cover for you. You decided to make it public today." "Sloane," Marilyn barked, turning to my sister. Tell her we are family." Sloane looked at me. She wasn't holding the phone up anymore. She looked terrified. "Violet," Sloane sobbed, and this time the fear was real. "Please, the internet, they are destroying me. People are digging up old tweets. They are contacting my sorority. If the police come, it will be everywhere. My life is over." "Your life isn't over, Sloane," I said. "But your storyline is. You wanted to be famous. Now you are." I pulled my arm free from Marilyn's grip. "I will make you a deal," I said. Marilyn's eyes lit up with hope. "Yes, anything. Just pay the bill." "No," I said. "I am not paying the bill. I am not paying for the lobster. I am not paying for the wine. I am not paying for the section." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a $10 bill. "I had a coffee before my shift started," I said. "And I had a bagel. That is what I ordered. That is what I am responsible for." I tucked the $10 bill into Marilyn's pocket. "You can use that toward the balance," I said. Marilyn stared at me, her mouth agape. "That is it. $10. The bill is $1,000, Violet." "Then you better start calling your friends," I said. "Or maybe you can sell the purse. It looks like it might be worth something." "You are a cruel, ungrateful child." Marilyn spat, the mask slipping completely now that she knew I wasn't going to save her. "I should have never supported you." "You didn't," I said. "That is the point." Marilyn's face crumpled. She reached out again, her voice dropping to a whimper. "Violet, please. Be a good daughter." I opened my car door. I looked at her one last time, a woman who had spent her life building a castle out of other people's credit and calling it an empire. "Being your daughter never required being your shield," I said. I got into the car, I started the engine, and I drove away. I didn't go far. I circled the block and parked in the lot of the grocery store across the street. I needed to see it. I needed to see the end. 10 minutes later, the front door of Cedar and Salt Bistro opened. Evan Rowe walked out first. He looked grim. Behind him came Marilyn and Sloane. They weren't walking with their heads held high. They were huddled together, looking at the ground. Marilyn wasn't wearing her hat anymore. She was clutching it in her hands. They had clearly scraped together whatever cash they had, probably emptying their wallets and transferring every cent Sloane had in her Venmo to Evan's account to avoid the police report. There was no screaming. There was no scene. It was just the quiet, crushing humiliation of consequence. Evan pointed to their car. They got in. They drove away. I waited until their taillights disappeared around the corner. Then, I turned my car off and walked back across the street. I went in through the front door this time. The restaurant was quieter now. The rush had broken. When I walked in, the atmosphere shifted. It wasn't tense. It was warm. It was like the room exhaled. Evan was at the host stand. He looked up and saw me. A slow smile spread across his face. "They paid," he said. "Cash, 3 debit cards, and a handful of quarters from your sister's purse. We are square." "I am sorry about the drama, Evan," I said. "Don't be," he said. "Best show we have had in years." He reached under the counter and pulled out a white envelope. "This is for you," he said. "From the floor." I took the envelope. It was thick. "The guy in the tweed jacket left $100, Evan said. "The grandmother left 50. The young couple left 50. People were impressed. They said you handled that with grace." I opened the envelope. There was almost $400 in cash inside. It wasn't charity. I knew the difference. Charity feels heavy. This felt light. It was respect. "Go get 'em, analyst," Evan said. I hugged him. Then I hugged Tessa, who whispered that she had the entire video backed up on a hard drive just in case. I walked out of Cedar and Salt for the last time. That night, my phone didn't stop buzzing, but for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid to look at it. Someone had screen recorded Sloane's live stream before she deleted it. A clip titled, "Waitress Destroys Entitled Mom with Receipts," was trending on Twitter. It had 2 million views. The comments were overwhelmingly on my side, but it wasn't the strangers that mattered. It was the texts from my family. My Aunt Linda, who had treated me with cool distance for years because Marilyn told her I was a dropout, sent a text, "Violet, I just saw the video. Is it true? Did you graduate with honors? Your mother told us you were failing. I am so sorry. We had no idea." My cousin Mike texted, "Dude, you froze her credit live on air. Legend." The truth was spreading like a wildfire, burning down the lies Marilyn had planted in the garden of our family for 2 decades. I didn't have to defend myself. The footage did the work. I slept that night without setting an alarm for 5 in the morning. The next day, Monday, I stood in the lobby of the Crown Ridge building. The floors were marble. The air smelled like expensive coffee and ambition. I wasn't wearing my apron. I was wearing a navy blue blazer I had bought with my tips. I checked in at security. The guard handed me a plastic badge. Violet Jenkins, junior analyst. I took the elevator to the 42nd floor. I walked into the open plan office. It was quiet, focused, the hum of serious money being moved. Sarah Gable, the senior director who had hired me, was standing by the coffee machine. She saw me. She paused. I felt a moment of panic. Had she seen the video? Was it too much drama? Was I a liability? Sarah walked over. She looked me in the eye. "I saw a clip online yesterday," she said. Her voice was neutral. I straightened my spine. "Ms. Gable, I can explain. That was a personal matter and you kept your professionalism under fire." She interrupted. A small, rare smile touched her lips. "You had a hostile counterparty, a public audience, and significant pressure, and you stuck to the facts. That matters here. Welcome to the team." She handed me a mug and walked away. I walked to my desk. It was near the window. I could see the whole city spread out below me. I could see the streets where I used to drive my beat-up car. I could see the rooftops of the restaurants where I used to scrub tables. I sat down. I logged in. On my way home that evening, I stopped at a florist. I bought a massive bouquet of white lilies. They were expensive. They were luxurious. I didn't buy them for Marilyn. I didn't send them to Sloane. I took them home to my apartment. I put them in a vase on my wobbly kitchen table. I sat there and just looked at them, breathing in their scent. I bought them for myself. For years. I thought revenge meant making them pay. I thought it meant screaming, or suing, or making them hurt the way I hurt. But as I sat there, in the quiet of an apartment paid for by my own hard work, with a job that valued my mind and a name that was finally my own, I realized the truth. The best revenge isn't wreckage. It isn't a viral video. It isn't even seeing them humiliated. The best revenge is a life that no longer asks permission to exist. And mine was just getting started. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. Are you listening from your car, your kitchen, or maybe your desk at work? Let me know in the comments below so we can share this moment together. Please don't forget to subscribe to the Lily Revenge Stories channel. Like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story get heard by even more people. Your support means the world to me. Stay strong.